Okay, welcome. My name is Travis Messman. Um, this is the first time for me, so just bear through it for the first time. I'm here to talk about something that came up the other day for me, and it's this thing. It's called a crossover. It's a device that we use um, in audio production, mostly in live sound, I think, because sometimes when you're in the studio, you don't need like massive speakers. You can sometimes use like little they call them desktop speakers or just an all-in-one cabinet. So basically, you just hook up your amplifier and in you go. Sometimes the speakers are self-amplified. Got the power cord, and then you got the signal cord plugged into the amplifier. So today you get Travis, the technician. So I have been doing this for a long time, probably since, well, not probably. I've been doing lights and sound since I was 16. From back in Mobile, Alabama, where I worked with a young entrepreneur who taught me a lot of stuff about the basics. And we got into rock and roll and clubs, and we did DJ stuff a lot. And so I've plugged in speakers and lights and video screens and for a long time, a very long time. So we're going to talk about the crossover. It's just a concept. Basically, we're going to go through a little bit of theory about it. And all right, I'm going to hit the share screen, and I'm not very good at this, but we'll go for it. I think it's this one. I think it's this one. Share. If I go like that, there it is. All right, so whoops, that's not the beginning. Let's see if I can get it back to the beginning. I'm only going to do it one take, okay? Because this is my first time. Okay, this is my opening slide. What's a crossover? It really does change the way that you use speakers and amplifiers and things like that. Really, we usually use these in big concert sound so that we can separate the top speakers from the low speakers, because it's pretty apparent that subwoofers are made for sub frequencies, and the smaller speakers are used for the upper frequencies. So basically, what you're looking at here is the front, the top little bar there with all the knobs on it. That's the front. It's got a lot of dials on it. We're going to talk about how to turn the dial a little bit. On the back, obviously, there's a lot of inputs and outputs. There's going to be a power, and then there's going to be like a high, low, mid, maybe just high and low, maybe uh, maybe all three, high, low, and mid. I've actually seen four-way crossovers. Basically, sometimes uh, the stereo a stereo crossover can be a mono crossover. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll take the three-way crossover, and it's in stereo. So you got the left side and the right side, and you can control all the crossover frequencies in the left side and the right side. But if you hit a little button and turn it into a mono, you can have literally you can have four four separate frequencies coming out, or separate ranges of frequency coming out of this processor. And if you get two of those, then you can get your left four-way frequency, right four-way frequency. And we'll get deeper into why and what speakers we're going to use. Basically, let's go to the next slide so we can talk about what we're going to talk about here. So the questions are, what does a crossover do? We're we're going to get into actually what it is happening at the point of crossover, what's happening, what components connect to the crossover. That's going to be important. What determines the point of crossover? what makes each component suited for its particular frequency range, and when is a crossover necessary, and how to properly use a crossover. So these are some of the points that we're going to work on. So let's just jump right into the next. Oh yeah, what does a crossover do? Let's see. Here we go. Wait a minute. Was that the right one? What components? What component did I put? I put the slide in the wrong. There it is. All right. All right. So I got my slides out of order, but again, we're going to do a one take. What determines the point of crossover? Okay. What does a crossover do? It takes the desired frequencies, right? And it takes these bands, and basically it takes the upper parts of the frequencies and separates it from the lower parts of the frequencies. So that only the frequencies going to the subs go to the subs, and only the frequencies that need to go to the upper cabinets go to the upper cabinets, right? So that yeah, and there's a lot of reasons for that, right? And then what determines? Well, let's go back. I missed a slide. What does a crossover do? Let's go back. Let's answer that question again. It basically takes the upper frequencies and separates it from the lower frequencies, you know, and that's pretty much what it does. That's all it does. It separates the top from the low. That's what it does. Okay. So, okay. Moving next. That's basically what it is. Okay. What components connect to the crossover? Okay. So basically you've got all of your instruments that you've plugged into your soundboard, and there are tons of components, right? A lot of times you got the effects rack, and you got the, there's, the splitters and the sound snake, and and all the instruments. Basically, you're gonna, if the instruments are all mic'd up and they're plugged into the soundboard there, and then basically out of the soundboard, maybe into your graphic EQ, maybe into, more and more. There's so many processors, right? So, but basically, the link between all of the sounds that you're gonna make, that you're making, right, and inputting, right, your sources are gonna have to go through this crossover before they make it to the amplifiers, and then before they make it to the speakers, right? So the crossover point, this little device right here, will separate all of those once you've made all of the sounds, putting them into the soundboard, and then it'll go through this crossover, and then it'll send it out to the amplifiers. You're going to have graphic EQs, you're going to have all kinds of things, right? But basically, after the crossover comes the amplifiers, where it splits out to all the different speakers. In my little photo there's a huge stack, right? You got the little bitty ones on the top, and a little bit bigger ones on underneath that, and a little bit bigger, and a little bit bigger, and a little bit bigger, and a little bit bigger speakers. And so all of these components all of the sound goes through this device right here. Okay, basically that's what you need to know. So it separates what components. All right, what determines the point of crossover? I really like the answer to this. Basically, there's a word in here. If you read the whole thing, dividing things into neat patches is stop and start. Okay, dividing at a desired frequency, right? So basically, you are deciding, right? Most of the, if you have the ones with the dials on it and the ones, you know, where you can like actually manipulate this crossover point, this point of crossover, um, it's your choice, okay? You can choose it, or you can you know, go by what the manual says. You know, a lot of the speakers come with like manuals, and a lot of the boxes, you know, PA cabinets. You know, you can do a lot of research and figure out what speakers work best, and actually, you know, there are, you know, from the different manufacturers, you can ask questions, and I'm sure they've got lots of answers and lots of pamphlets and, you know, material to read about their particular product and what frequencies work best, right, for their speakers. You can go by all those diagrams. Um, Actually, you know, back in the day, like when I was 16, let's see, how many years ago was that? Uh, Almost 30 years ago, right? So for 3 decades, I've been messing with this, and I really, I really kind of enjoy doing it the old-fashioned way. Sometimes you know, I'm a little out of speed with the new digital stuff, but basically, if you got the knobs, you got the power to determine the point of crossover. So there you go. It's at a particular frequency, right? There's a particular frequency there. All right, that you will choose. All right, moving on. Let's get a little bit more information so this makes sense too. All right, what makes each component suited for its particular frequency range? Well, I love this question. Um, right here on the right side, we got the car subwoofer, right? Now, I feel like, you know, most everybody in the world has seen big speakers, like car subs and stuff like that. It's really cool to watch them move and, you know, move the air and stuff. Basically, the bigger the speaker, the um, the more ability it has to move the air, right? So, so and it can push the air in different ways. You can basically, if the speaker's like literally, I don't know if you can see my little photo, but if it's as big as your, you know, your wingspan, it'll move. It'll try to move that much air and push that and and vibrate that air, right? So also, the bigger the speaker, a lot of times the more able it is to handle lower frequencies, to push lower vibrations. Also, if you look around the edge of the round speaker, it's called the speaker surround. It's very flexible. Um, the more it can move forward and back, the more flexible that is. The sort of like the more pushing of air, and there's a shape, right? The cone. The cone is you know, pulsing into the air, right? To sort of create the pulse and the boom, boom, right? If it only made like just the kick drum sound, it would be, or just one thud, it would just poof, and you would hear it would just doosh at you, right? So the bigger the speaker, the lower frequencies, it's easier for the speaker to handle lower frequencies. So and then the smaller the speaker, it's more able to handle, you know, a little bit higher frequencies. You know, you've seen mid ranges. Hold on a second. I got a speaker over here that I can hold on to. All right. All right. So in my hand, I've got the. Let me hit stop. Hit stop share. All right, so you can see me. I got this little speaker in my hand. This is a car stereo mid-range speaker. You can see that it's got the surround on it here. And it's just a single component, got the magnet. There's a voice coil in there somewhere. If you're going to school about this stuff, you know about voice coils. Um, and then it's made of certain different materials, right? I've seen the polypropylene ones, which is like the plastic. This one, you can feel it. It's like a paper, but it's like a, um, I don't know. There's this paper is like obviously like there's a mesh inside of it. You know, it's a very special kind of paper, so that it when it hits the air, pushes the air, and it'll make a sound, right? So, and then there's the surround, right? And you know, the more that speaker is able to like move forward and back harder, faster, the louder it can get, right? The more it can actually hit the air, right? You ever heard of Bruce Lee's 1-inch punch, right? He had so much power in that one punch, right? That 1 inch, right? So here we go with the power of the speaker. Also, let me go back to the share so we can see what the other little photo. Where is it? Where is it? Screen 2. Where did it go? Oh yeah, screen 2. Share. There it is. So the little image on the left there, that's a photo. That's a tweeter diaphragm. So in the super high frequencies, like this design of the the paper and the surround and stuff, it really doesn't produce the higher frequencies very well. So, but basically this tweeter on the left, it's made out of a totally different material. So it's made of, I don't know what they make them out of. It's like, it's tin of some sort, could be aluminum, any kind, any kind of metal. And they call this the voice coil membrane. I really like that term, the membrane. Um, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So that's the membrane. And when it moves, right, that little, it can create those super high frequencies. Um, uh, and then you can set a lot of power to this little thing right here. But the problem with this little speaker diaphragm here, this little device, is that if you put the lower frequencies in it, it will try to move. It will try to create that frequency. But basically, if you put in those frequencies and you put a lot of power, it's just basically going to tear itself apart. So, because it won't move that far. Like, the subwoofer's got that big surround around it, so it allows it to like really push a lot of big air. This one doesn't need to push a lot of big air. It needs to push a lot of little bitty air. So, and it's made out of metal, which is very interesting. Paper or different materials that kind of grab onto the air, kind of porous maybe, or has a different texture to it, can actually grab the air a little bit better and push it forward. I think if it was made out of metal, and I've seen them, and they look cool, but they don't make the same kind of sounds. This feels like it's like kind of grabbing the air and pushing it forward. And then we got the metal, very thin. These are very thin. I don't know the specific measurements, but these can be very loud. I've worked with the ones at home and your little bitty in your desktop speakers. They're very small. They don't need to be very big. So they're really small, and then as you're trying to make more volume, they do have to get a little bit bigger. In concert tweeters, I've seen 2-inch voice coils, basically, about the size of your thumb, right, from top to bottom radius or diameter, right? And I've seen them destroyed. I've seen them destroyed for having too much power and the wrong frequency range, right? So those are some of the factors, size and stuff. So let's move on. We're going to get some more information and it'll get more clear as we go. All right, I guess I got to click on this. Go ahead. All right, let's try this one. There we go. When is the crossover necessary to make efficient sound? Well, I love this photo here. This is I forget where I took it from, but basically they're building a wall of sound with this in this arena, and there's all kinds of speakers in there. I'm sure this is like super complicated, requires a lot of different processors, a lot of different things. I mean, they're really working on this sound. When is the crossover if necessary to make efficient sound? Basically, crossovers are starting to get necessary when you raise the power. So you turn it all up, like then the only way in this environment, this air atmosphere, to make make big sound is to separate the frequencies and you know use different speakers to make different sounds, so you can get the full range because it's power. How to properly use the crossover, right? Tune to the desired frequency. Okay, this is easy, right? This is fun. I really look. So basically, you got to you start by defining. You think about the sound, right? It's got vibrations and frequencies, and you want to define the sound. It's like all this information that you want to put out in a very powerful way, and something about the divide, if you had a single, go back. Um, let's look at this real quick. So if you only had this speaker, um, and you turned it all the way up, it would only, even at full range, it would only produce a lower range, and it wouldn't sound very good. In fact, at certain points, when you turn it all the way up, all of the high sounds that it's trying to produce um, are overpowered by the lower frequencies that this particular speaker is very good at producing. Um, and then this one right here, if you just plug the power into this one, it would create the higher frequencies pretty good. But when you turn the power up and it's trying to create the lower frequencies, it basically tears itself apart. So it's not very efficient, right? For this little speaker to try and make big sound. So what means that you just basically you need all of it, right? So how to properly use the crossover? You got to listen, right? If the speaker is distorting at high volumes, basically it's trying to produce sounds that it can't produce, right? Like if the frequencies, if they're too low, again, they'll start making, especially the upper cabinets. If this frequency is too low, it'll start distorting the higher frequencies, and when it's trying to make too many frequencies at the same time, again, it's like it'll burn itself up, right? Oh, and you can overpower even if you got it tuned. In fact, let's talk about tune real quick. Even if you got it tuned, too much power will still blow the speaker. Like let's just say you got your speaker to a frequency range, and you turn it up a little too much, it'll still destroy. However, one thing to really think about when you're working on your tune is that all the speakers are different, right? They're all different sizes. Sometimes they're different shapes. You seen the square ones? Anybody? Um, yeah. So you have to listen, right? You have to listen to it so you can hear the sound that the speaker's making. Um, and you can hear when the speaker is comfortable. I think I think you can actually literally hear it when the speaker's like, oh yeah, I like those sounds. That makes, that feels good. What are you trying to do? Actually, when you're producing sound, you got to level it out, right? You can't have too much high, right? You can't have too much low. Let's say, you had your speaker stacks, and you had I've seen this before in clubs and even in concerts. Basically, right in front of the stage, it's completely covered in a row of subwoofer speakers. The front of the stage, basically, you've got these cabinets that are like 4 feet tall, and whether they've got 4 or 2 or 8 or whatever it is. I mean, they can have these massive subwoofers, right? 18-inch subwoofers. I like a 15-inch subwoofer that it seems to make a good tight sub sound. However, with an 18-inch subwoofer, you can get a little bit lower frequencies and you can push a little more power through them. At some point, the size of the speaker, I think, actually can muddle the sound. However, if you've got, like, I've seen them in churches, these big, massive 32, 33-inch subs, right? And they're made for the organ, so that that lowest frequency can still feel like nice and full, right? And you're sitting there in church and you're feeling it, and the last note comes and it, with the high note too, a huge range. Um, I think that's important, right? If you want to feel the music right, it can't be too much on the high and not too much on the low, but you still need those lower frequencies to like fill the sound, right? If you got, your bass, um, like a cello, but your string bass with the bow, and you really like that lower frequency, it's really hard to catch it. So you stick your microphone nice and close, or it's got it like its little clip on, and you want to shape that sound. So you want to pull those lower frequencies out so that you get like a full sound. Now, what you're looking at, this photo here that I took off the internet, it's like a spectrograph, right? Audio spectrum. On the left side, it's got the lower frequencies. On the right side, it's got the higher frequencies. Now, if you ever been in a setup for a concert before, there's a point in which the day in which the sound engineer is just turned on the amplifiers and everything is plugged in, and he just wants to make sure that all the speakers are getting their signal. So whatever you call it, you unmute the mains, and a lot of times they call it pink noise. If you're not familiar with pink noise, you might have heard of the term white noise. Sounds very similar. It sounds a lot like when you turn on, back in the day when you had the channels and you turned on the TV and you see the snow on the TV and you had that sound, right? The difference between pink sound and white noise, or pink noise and white noise, is that pink noise as a signal is supposed to be flat across all the frequencies. So if you were to put the signal of the pink noise through the just that without going through the microphone, it should read flat, right? So, and then you plug that into your soundboard or whatever, and you pump it through the speakers, all of them, tops, mids, lows, super lows, whatever, right? And you take that little bitty microphone, little condenser microphone, plug it into the graph, and it listens, right? You turn everything up, and if the left side of the graph is like really high, it means your low frequencies are like blowing you out, right? And conversely, if the right side of the graph is like super high, then your high cabinets are probably pumping a little bit too hard, and give them a little too much volume. What you're really trying to do is trying to get the graph flat, right, with the pink noise. That way, whatever signal coming through, it has the best chance of getting the full range. Now, that's really like very what's the word, gross, I don't know, that's the macro, right? So you got just enough power to the highs and just enough power to the lows that so that it can produce like a flat graph, with the low frequencies just as loud as the higher frequencies, right? The thing is, it's not always like that, right? So you have to get other devices, right? Like the EQ and stuff like that. So you can like really notch the frequencies, right? So you can get each little frequency just right, so the graph is actually perfect, and what you're hearing is a very uniform sound throughout the frequencies from the lowest of the lows to the highest of the highs, and your graph is flat. It becomes very interesting, you know, like so once you got your graph flat, what you're gonna do is play your favorite song, um, and then you'll realize that the sound is shaped. The sound is being shaped, and the shape of the sound is determined, especially in live sound, by a heck of a lot of things. Um, a lot of sound engineers talk about the shape of the room, the shape of the area, the arena. You know, there's a lot to do with shape, right? And there's a ton of processors, tons. And I don't want to go all through all the processors, but you will be shaping sound. Um, if you're using a crossover, you will have probably more than likely we will have other processors to be dealing with. But right now, we're just talking about the crossover. And that's the end of my slides show, right? Let's stop sharing here. All right, so basically that's my presentation about the crossover and how you use it and what it's used for and some theory behind. So like if you're out there doing a concert and you know you if you've done it before, then you know how to do it. But let's just say it's your first time and you're dialing it, right? Just listen, right? Uh, your subwoofers, just love those sub frequencies, and your upper cabinets, love those higher frequencies. But I try to squeeze the juice out of the cabs, right? So when you're rocking, you know, you turn that dial to where the upper cabinets or speakers, you know, feel really nice and comfortable, and the lower speakers feel nice and comfortable in those range. And sometimes, you know, you're missing it. You're in a bit of a gap, right? Sometimes, like for my home stereo system, I've got these massive subs, and then these little bitty studio style upper cabinets, which means my little crossover is turned up a little bit higher, you know, so that my upper cabinets don't have to take on a lot of these lower frequencies. Um, and my lower cabinets do handle some of the lowest of the low frequencies, but they are taking a lot of the mid range. Um, and so with all the power that's going through those subwoofers, I really have to make a lot of shape. I do a lot of shaping. I pull out a lot of mid in my graphic EQ so that the subwoofers aren't trying to push that mid too hard, because it will, right? If your graphic EQ and your crossovers turned up way high, your subwoofer, your lower cabinets will try and produce the mid range too high. So basically, I use the graph or the graphical EQ, and I pull out the mid ranges, and then I try to make the sound, like I said, flat. So that the upper speakers are comfortable and the lower speakers can handle all that, and I don't have too much power go to the lower speakers. Anyway, I hope that helped with your understanding of the crossover, and I didn't ramble on too long. And so that is the end of the practical explanation of the crossover. And if you are not interested into the next part of this video, I want to talk about something that's a little bit woo-woo. So you can stop it right here, or we can go through this one more time. What I want to do is try talking um, about this in a kind of a spiritual metaphor. And if you're not interested in that, um, that's okay. I don't mind. So here we go. What's a crossover? Basically, it's a point at which the frequencies get separated, right? You've got some high frequencies and you got some low frequencies. And this little device right here changes everything. The crossover changes everything about how the sound is dealt with and coped, right? It it processes, right? It separates. It what's that? What's that word? Partitions. Yes, it can sometimes partition. It does. This as a device, it does kind of mesh some of the or does a roll off. They call it a roll off, but basically there's the point of the crossover is the separation, is the partition, right? What does the crossover do? It partitions. And when you're looking at yeah, we'll go through that. What are the components, right? It's it's the devices, the different devices, the people, the frequencies, the parts of you that are frequencies. What components? It's everything, right? Okay, but sometimes everything gets separated. Okay, what determines. Okay, we're going to go through these questions. It's going to be interesting, I think. All right, keep going. What goes into the crossover? Source. Okay, that's an interesting term that people use in the spiritual community. Source. It is like the power. It's like the force. It's like everything that is creativity. Okay, everything that creates. It's the energy of creation. And then what comes out of the and then it goes through the crossover, and then we got an output, right? The outputs are these little different parts of the sound. In a spiritual term, metaphor, what I like to think is like source is kind of like it's like a consciousness. It's the creative, powerful force. Source is the consciousness, right? That passes through the crossover. And because like our world, our reality, has this thing, you've heard of dissonance, right? Or there's harmony and there's dissonance, right? You got these two notes, and if they're really too close to, if they're, if you got the black key and you press the white key right next to it at the same time, it, it doesn't sound like it's in harmony. Now, we're learning a whole lot in our spiritual thing, is that the different frequencies are neither good nor they are bad, or are they bad, right? So the little big cabinet up here at the top over here on that in the speaker stack, it doesn't create good or bad frequencies. It creates a lot of high frequencies. And then the speakers over here down at the bottom, it doesn't necessarily create good or bad frequencies. It creates low frequencies. Okay, and so in our world, in our reality, what we have is a spiritual component where our vibrations, if we are of high frequency, we do produce a certain kind of thing, right? Or if we're low frequency, we're producing certain kinds of things. Now, I'll let your imagination go, right? There are things of a lower frequency nature that are good, and there are things of a lower frequency nature that are not necessarily so good. According to our personal discernment and our own personal opinion. So that's us, all right? So that's on you, whether you've decided whether things are good or bad. I myself, I'm not gonna make any judgments or choices at the moment. I've heard some people use the word agnostic. Okay, which means I'm learning, I don't know. I know, but I don't know what's good or bad sometimes. All right, what components? Yeah, the speakers, the top speakers, the lower speakers. I think that at some point we're getting separated. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. Like good people can hang out with not so good people, or low frequency people have a hard time hanging out with high frequency people, or the darkness is eradicated by the Okay, still recording. Okay, good. One take. The darkness is eradicated by the light, right? So if you light the match in a little room, it changes. Obviously, it changes the frequency of the room, right? Okay. Let me go back to my share. Let's see if I can find it. Screen two. Share. Okay. All right, let's move on. If you're thinking about this and the crossover and the different levels over here, maybe these are like dimensions, right? But that little speaker right there is its own device, and actually within its little walls, it's its own thing. Um, and it can't that little speaker at the top there can't be the big speaker at the bottom. However, they're all connected, okay? Right? Through the cables, the wires, the whatever, they're all connected. And that's a metaphor. That's a big metaphor as well. What determines the point of the crossover? This is as a spiritual term, determining the point of the crossover. It's very interesting. Um, like, what do you think is like a high vibration, and what do you think is a low vibration? Like, also, what do you think is good? What do you think is bad? Um, personally, I don't. I want to make sure that what you what you're hearing right now is basically it's all speculation. It's all just mind stuff. It's mind thought. Like, I'm just thinking about it. Like, what is this? When do I decide whether I'm gonna cultivate these lower frequencies, or am I gonna cultivate these higher frequencies? Am I gonna find balance within these? Um, do I need? I does this uh, entity right here need to separate itself from the lower things? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Something's coming. Something's happening. I don't know. All right, let's go on. What makes each component suited for its particular frequency range? Hey, this is very interesting. I listen to a lot of YouTubers, and there's a lot of terms get thrown out. Optimization is a big term. Optimization on your health, optimization on your mind, optimization. You're making, the vessel itself, like if you want to talk about a speaker, let's design a speaker that can make a range of sounds, a range of frequencies, just in a perfect way, right? So you're gonna design. Maybe you're designing a speaker, or maybe you've been handed a speaker. or so, like, the device, this thing that we're walking around in, what's its frequency range, right? What frequency ranges are you outputting, right? What's your lowest low and what's your highest high? um are the low lows uh, not good, or considered bad, or whatever? And then the highs, are they high enough? Are they is your range up there? Can you reach more? Can you get up higher? I don't know. That's a spiritual question. Can you vibrate at a higher frequency? The yogis say, yes, for sure. You can change everything about your frequency, which also changes everything about uh your device, your vessel, your body, right? So the frequencies, right? You're putting them through a you're putting you're outputting these vibrations, okay, in through the device, right? How do you optimize it? How do you make the tweeter work the best? How do you make the woofer work the best, right? Optimize. When is a crossover necessary to make efficient sound? Or um, when do we need this kind of crossover to express ourselves efficiently, to express the vibrations efficiently? When is it necessary? Okay. When is it necessary that we need it? That's a good question. It's about power. I really think it's about power because, like, again, when you turn it up, if you turn it up too loud, it starts to distort, right? And one little cabinet, one little speaker trying to make all the sounds, and you start, at low volumes, it might sound good. At high volumes, it starts to break up. So you need bigger speakers or optimized speakers. If that little one right there in front of you can't handle the lower frequencies, you'll partition the upper frequencies and add an, another component to your sound, right? I used to do it all the time. I used to buy these subwoofers in a box with a little amplifier built into the little box, and it had like knobs and stuff with where you could dial it in, right? So anyway, you can add components, you can add things so that you can express your power, right? Sometimes you need to separate to express the frequencies that you want to express. Oh, that sounds kind of wild when I'm thinking about it like that. How to properly use this crossover? Holy cow! Okay, so in a spiritual sense, like, how do you properly use the point of crossover where you've decided that you're gonna be in this higher range? Um, Look, it says in the little caption under the big caption, it says tune to the desired frequency. So, oh gosh, so the crossover. Okay, let's just say it in a weird way. We'll say it. The crossover is coming, right? Here it comes. You see the crossover, and you got a choice whether to be on the upper side of the crossover or the lower side of the crossover. And you have to make this choice. Here it comes. Moving on. You want to define yourself? Oh my God. Or the sound or the vibration or the frequencies, define this thing. Wow. It's very difficult to define because it is made up of so many parts of information. It is made up of so much, and it's always changing, especially in time, right? The only constant in time is change. So the vibrations are always changing. The frequencies are always changing. So you're always trying to deal with this. You're always coping. You're always doing that. And in a spiritual way, the reason why we need these components, these things, is because well, in the single pointedness of your existence behind your eyeballs, I guess, you got to learn stuff, I think. And then when you're trying to get better at it and you turn your power up, you realize that certain things aren't working. And then some things are working, and some things flow a little bit better. And some things don't flow very, very good. So sometimes you got to like tune, right? You got to tune, and in order to tune, you got to listen. You got to be aware. You got to use all of your senses to try and figure out what's working, what's not working. Um, how do you make your moves, right? You got to be sensitive to that. And yes, is it distorting at high volumes? Now, I've done a bit of high volume expression in my life, and some of the expressions have been distorted. So I needed to change the speaker. I needed to change the, the cabinet, or I needed to change the device that was making I need to optimize it, right? I need to optimize it. You got to turn the knob. You got to figure it out. You got to go for it. Experiment. Use your mind. Use your imagination. and realize that not all speakers are the same. So if you consider yourself one of these little devices here that's making frequencies and making sounds, realize that you are not the same as anyone else. Um, we all have a base frequency, right? You're a human, I'm a human, right? I bleed, you bleed, we got a heartbeat for the most part. Um, Organicness is, that's what we're talking about at the moment. And we're not talking about anything artificial. We're just, talking about how we interact in the world in a spiritual way. So not all the speakers are the same. They have different characteristics and they like different sounds. And you do too, just so you know. Um, how do you find balance? How do you make the levels right? Well, you don't want to have too much of the high, and you definitely don't want to have too much of the low. Um, and it's never flat. I'm sorry. If you're a spiritual person, you know that life is not flat. It's always going up and it's always going down like waves. It's natural, right? If you're talking about the spiritual nature, it's never perfect, or at least from our limited perspective, right? We have this limited perspective of perfection. Some spiritual gurus say that even your what you might consider an imperfection or a distortion is actually part of nature, and you shouldn't be judging it. You shouldn't be judging it. I've worked on a lot of letting go of my notions of good and bad and the ramifications of deciding. So, coming to kind of the end of the spiritual side of this, uh, what's your desire? What's the shape of the vibrations that you're putting out? What do you want? Who are you, right? And all the devices and all of the optimizations and the vessel that you refine um, moment to moment. It'll continue to refine. It'll continue to shape. It'll continue to change. What direction do you want it? What way are you on? Um, Several different ways, right? Several different ways. I don't want to get biblical. I'm not an expert in biblical. I am an expert. You can call me an expert, I think, in some of these devices, some of these things that we work with. And it is interesting to think about the metaphors and relate them to things, relate them to the days and our experiences, right? And so we can expand our understanding. I know that was a little bit woo. I know that's crazy. I know it's wild. And if I lost you right there at the, in the middle there, after describing the technical terms, or even before that, sorry. This is my first time again. And anyway, I just want what I'd like to try and do is to be the change instead of reacting to change. I'm going to start leading my own personal change, right? And I'm going to do my thing, and I'm going to shape my world in ways that may not seem familiar because I'm dealing with different vibrations. The power is different now, and things are changing, and they're changing constantly. Again, I don't want to get biblical, right? I don't want to talk about any of the trigger words, the buzzwords that get people on different tracks. I want to keep it to spiritual. I want to keep it very simple. I want to talk about shape. I want to talk about sometimes, they use words like compartmentalization. No, I don't like that one at all. But there is a kind of a partition that you might want to think about. We're very sensitive to the vibrations. now, mostly, usually. Some of us who are more conscious than others or more sensitive. If you're feeling very sensitive, I just recommend contemplating this, thinking about the shape of the vibrations, maybe the vibrations you're sensing, or maybe in the vibrations that you're putting off. And think about the shape of that. And only you can make the choices. Only you can make the determinations. And only you have the desire, right? Only you can have that specific desire that relates to you, right? Because you're different than everybody else. So what you're putting out is going to be different. And the more you like realize that, the easier it is. Sometimes when you make mistakes, it's it's kind of hard. Maybe you're trying to do your best, but you make a mistake, and then you realize it, and then because it's like we have a new now and a new now and a new now as part of the environment that we live in. We have we have a chance and a choice to make different choices, different decisions. So, and that's pretty simple. That's pretty simple. You get yourself in a right environment, a right vibration, right set of frequencies. I think you can make pretty good choices that continue on the way that you're looking for. So, you know what? That's a long one, and I'm gonna stop. And I really want thank you, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I'm not doing this for money at all, but if it turns out that this is something that people like to listen to, we might do some more and just express some more ideas about stuff. What do they say? Like, comment, and subscribe. I'm not much of a yeah. I don't like to uh, advertise. I don't believe in that. I think if you want it, you want it. If you don't, that's okay. Everybody's got their own way. All right, love to everybody.